Maybe true wealth has nothing to do with accumulating stuff on the outside, but everything to do with healing this fundamental separation on the inside. Welcome to Wealthy Lead. What if I told you that two of the world's great spiritual traditions, separated by thousands of miles and a massive cultural divide, were actually telling the exact same story? Today, we're going to dive into a connection you probably never expected between the Garden of Eden and the cosmic flow of the Tao. I mean, think about it. On one hand, you've got the story of Adam. It's a very personal story of creation, temptation, and this catastrophic fall. And on the other, you have the Tao, this impersonal, vast philosophy about harmony and just being natural. They seem like total opposites, right? But what if they're just two different languages trying to describe the same fundamental human journey? So, to really see this connection, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Because, as it turns out, both traditions start with a vision of a perfect, unbroken state of being. You can think of it like an original blueprint for what it means to be human. Now, Adam's life in Eden, before the fall, it wasn't just about living in a nice garden, right? It was a state of consciousness. It was defined by this seamless unity. He had a direct, unfiltered connection to the divine, a total harmony with the natural world around him, and, this is the big one, no internal division. There was no shame, no chattering inner critic. He just was. And here's where it gets really mind-blowing. When you put that Edenic state right next to the core ideas of Daoism, the parallels are just undeniable. Living in God's will, that's a perfect match for flowing with the Tao. That joyful work in the garden, well, that's a beautiful picture of what the Daoists call Wu Wei, or effortless action. And a life of pure presence with no self-consciousness, that's exactly what Ziran, or naturalness, is all about. It's the same picture of perfection, just painted with a completely different brush. Okay, so let's quickly nail down that term, Wu Wei. It doesn't mean being lazy or doing nothing. The best way to think about it is like a pro athlete who's in the zone. They're not overthinking every single move, are they? No, their actions just flow spontaneously and perfectly. That is Wu Wei. It's acting in complete harmony with the moment, without the ego stepping in and messing things up. And for Adam, that was his default state. But of course, as we all know, that state of perfect wholeness, it didn't last. Both traditions describe this pivotal moment when that unity was shattered, creating what you could call the Great Separation, a split that really defines the human condition even today. A good way to picture it is like a perfect mirror, reflecting all of reality as one unbroken image. And then, bam! Something happens and that mirror shatters into 1,000 tiny pieces. Now, this isn't just a bedtime story. It's a powerful metaphor for a catastrophic fracture in our own consciousness. So in the biblical version, the catalyst is that temptation to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And get this, the promise wasn't just about getting smarter, it was about gaining a new power, the power to judge, the power to slice reality up into pairs, good, evil, right, wrong. The second Adam asserts his own will to do that. He steps outside of that flow, that circle of unity. And the consequences of this split are shockingly identical in both worldviews. First, the mind starts dividing everything. It's me versus you, us versus them, good versus bad. Then, with that division comes the internal judge, and suddenly shame and fear show up for the very first time. And finally, life stops being a harmonious flow. It becomes a struggle, a fight against a world that now feels separate, and maybe even a little hostile. This, right here, is the birth of the ego as we know it. This is why understanding the original meaning of sin is so crucial. The Hebrew word kata is actually an old archery term. It literally means to miss the mark. So it's not just about breaking a rule or being a bad person. It's about veering off course, missing the point of your own nature and the nature of reality itself, which, you have to admit, is a perfect description of what Daoism calls losing the way. So if both traditions diagnose the exact same problem, this fall into an ego-driven separation, it just makes sense that they'd both offer a solution, right? And they do. They both give us a kind of roadmap for the journey back home. Now, the paths definitely look different on the surface. The Abrahamic path is all about surrender. You realign your individual will with God's will through things like faith and prayer. The Daoist path, on the other hand, is about subtraction. It's about dissolving the ego through stillness and simplicity, trying to get back to that uncarved block of your original, true nature. There's this incredible quote from the Tao Te Ching that just says it all. To pursue learning, one accumulates daily. To pursue the Tao, one subtracts daily. It's not about adding more knowledge or more rules or becoming a better version of yourself. It's about letting go, unlearning, subtracting everything that isn't really you until all that's left is that natural, effortless flow. But here is the absolute core insight, the thing that ties it all together. Despite the different methods, surrender versus subtraction, both traditions point to the exact same obstacle. The common enemy on both paths is the isolated, striving ego. That part of us that believes it's separate from everything else. Whether you surrender it to God or dissolve it into the Tao, the mission is the same. Get that ego out of the driver's seat. So okay, what does this ancient spiritual map mean for us, right here, right now? How does any of this connect to living what we'd call a truly wealthy life, a life filled with meaning and wholeness? Well, when you strip away all the cultural specifics, what you're left with is a single, universal human story. It's a story that lives deep inside all of us, I think. There's this faint memory of oneness, this very real and often painful experience of our current separation, and this profound, deep hope that we can heal that wound and find our way back home. And really, this brings us to the final big question. Maybe true wealth has nothing to do with accumulating stuff on the outside, but everything to do with healing this fundamental separation on the inside. Could it be that this universal journey from fragmentation back to wholeness is the real secret to a life of profound peace, purpose, and genuine inner wealth? Subscribe to Wealthy Lead for more explainers that enrich your perspective.